So I hope everyone had a chance to review the minutes from the last meeting, which was September 21st. So could I have a motion to accept those minutes, please?
Move approval, Cynthia.
Thank you, Cynthia. Could I have a second, please?
I second.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. Okay, so I guess the first thing on the agenda, and Sharika, I'm not sure how you guys did this in the operating cabinet because I missed it. How did you do the vote?
We were in person, so we did a raise of hands. And the result of that is that the meetings will be quarterly in person and the others will be virtual. With the commission, we can first decide if they'll be virtual or in person. And then if there is a request for both, so I guess we can do between those three and then decide if we're going to do both, how that will be set up afterwards.
Okay, that sounds good. So let's see. Let's see what kind of little Okay, so I guess the choices we have before us then is to either continue meeting virtually, just like we are now, start meeting in person, and of course we'd have to identify where we're going to meet, and figure that out, or a combination of the two. Is that what you're saying, Sharika? So like a quarterly?
Yes, those were the options we presented to the operating cabinet.
Okay. So isn't there a hand raise thing here somewhere?
I thought it was, Alan. Yes, there is a raised hand. I was looking for the poll button, but I don't see one. I am not good with Zoom. I'm used to Teams, but I don't see a poll. But I could take the raised hand, or if everyone wants to comment in the chat, I can do it that way. And
yeah, and I guess and that's a good point. I guess the first thing we should do is, does anyone have any input or any discussion you want to do about either one of these three options?
This is Jay. I apologize. I joined a couple minutes late. Could you just restate the options, please?
Sure.
Oh, I see him in the chat.
Okay.
okay, Shane, thanks. I got you.
Okay.
Where did we meet prior to COVID, prior to going virtual? Where were meetings held?
Well, for this commission, the meetings were held in United Way on the, I think they're on the 17th floor of what I used to call the Wachovia building, but, the building downtown on 5th, and I can't think of the cross sections there, but we met there. I'm not sure if that's still available or not. I'd have to check and see, but that's where we met before. They have a big conference room in there.
We can make that.
Alan, I'm not a member, but I will interject that Bethesda Center would be more than happy to host your meetings.
Okay, thanks, Bo.
I think there's real value in meeting in person, if it's possible, for discussions and getting to know other board members for the work that we do.
And so when you say in person, would you prefer having every meeting in person, or like quarterly meeting in person?
A quarterly meeting in person, I think, would be important.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? I know we saw.
They're voting in the chat.
Yeah, I've seen them, some of them.
Could we confirm who iPhone is? iPhone?
Alan, if I remember, the issue with the United Way, with meeting at the United Way, was parking was brought up. That a few people brought up issues about being able to find parking there right now. But Bethesda sounds like an alternative that might could work for us.
Okay. Yeah, I know prior to when we met there before, I guess someone gave a list to the guard at the parking, that you drive by to get to park, and you would tell him your name. I guess he would check it off of some list and then tell you where to park there on the lower level. But I don't, it's been years, so I don't know what it's like there now.
This is Marcus Nelson. It may be showing iPhone.
Okay, thank you, Marcus.
Thanks, Marcus.
No problem. Yeah, I'm having some computer issues at the moment.
Okay.
Okay. I do in-person quarterly, Jay. Okay, so right now we do have the quarterly in-person. I'm in favor. I do want to confirm that I am only counting commission members. So give me 1 second.
Okay.
Those that are appointed on the commission instead of support staff.
Okay.
Okay, so we do have 1 virtual, 3 in person, and then 5 quarterly. So it looks like quarterly in person is what we would do, and then the rest virtual. And I would get with both about utilizing Bethesda Center. And Jay, if we were to need family services at any time, is that available?
Usually, yes. Just give me notice and I can check the room.
All right. And then Bo, you said Bethesda Center will possibly use John 3:16?
Yes, that's correct. John 3:16.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. So does anybody have any real issue with meeting quarterly in person? Okay, and if you do and just don't want to speak up, just email me or Sharika, either one, and just let us know. Okay, so Sharika, you and Laura switching spots.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you're up with community agency funding applications timeline.
Yes, so the community agency funding applications timeline, Ms. Cynthia is going to be, hold on, Cynthia had one question.
Yeah, that was asking when we were going to start. That's a good question.
So that could be something that you guys decide. I believe in, correct me if I'm wrong, Sophia, for operating cabinet, our first in person will be January.
February.
February? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we can make that decision here if you guys want to start it at the first of the year as January, and then the next one would be March? No, April. Or if you guys would like that to start in March.
Sharika, if we start in January, it'll be January, April, July, and October for the quarters.
I would suggest we do, this is just a suggestion, January, what Sophia just did. What would be the March one, Sophia? Only because funding timelines, if we want to meet in person to discuss funding would start, the funding applications would be ready in, usually it would be January and October.
Mm-hmm.
No, we submit in September. We submit funding applications in September. So we would need approval to submit before September. So hopefully we can do the funding applications around the in-person times. So we would need approval in August, early September. What would be the March one, Sophia?
So it would be, if we did March, it would be March, June, September, and then December.
Okay. Yeah, Cynthia, I think you're right. The March start date, but I would go with the consensus of the group.
Does anyone have a problem with starting in March?
Okay, so the community agency funding applications, those have been postponed. We usually complete those in November and bring those to you for approval around December, January. We now have a new date. The city has pushed back those application dates to start January 4th. The applications won't be submitted until the end of January. So I won't be bringing those to you for approval until March. So once those are ready for approval, they have been scored and reviewed by the rating panel. I'll be ready to bring those forth to you in March. So that is about 4 months later than what we would usually get them ready for you. So if you guys are looking for those, they will not be ready this year until March. And those are the applications for our emergency solution grant funds that are usually used for emergency shelter services and rental assistance.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, Sharika, I guess I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're fine. And then the update on the hotel purchase. So the innkeeper has been purchased, the innkeeper on Peters Creek Parkway. We are going to utilize that for 82 beds of permanent supportive housing. So that will be considered housing for individuals who are chronically homeless. So they are disabled and have been homeless for 2 years or more. That project has moved forward. We have connected with the local housing authority who has agreed to provide the vouchers for the project. The RFP went out for the vouchers 2 weeks ago, and the Step Up America team responded to the RFP. The city has secured the funds to pay the Step Up America team for the next 3 years. So that Step Up America team will provide the property management services as well as on-site case management services over the contract period of 3 years. We are looking to purchase a second motel. We're still in the market of finding one. We haven't been too successful in finding anything outside the floodplain right now, but we are hoping to do a second hotel conversion or look at another option of how to quickly make some affordable housing available for the population that we're serving.
That's great. So does anybody have any questions for Sharika on the hotel purchases?
How many rooms, Sharika?
82.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
That is awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely,
No
I
problem.
agree. Do you all have an idea in mind for the contractor to convert it for you for security cameras and things like that? You already have the RFPs? Or
Yes, so we was able to utilize a private developer to purchase and rehab the motel. So there will be no COC funds utilized for that. We were able to develop a relationship with a private developer for California. So they flew in, located a motel, and now they are in the process of utilizing their own funds to rehab it. So the only money that we would be putting in would be for the property management costs. Everything else would be maintained and purchased by the private developer.
that sounds great. I would say look for a security system for the outside or your hallways, and then perhaps partner with the city and county to have it connected to your real-time crime center. It will be free to connect with them. They may even provide you the cameras for free in the first 2 years. I think it's Get Connected Winston-Salem through Fusus, and I may be mispronouncing that. You might get your cameras for free.
Okay, I think that's a good idea.
Just for safety for everybody. Because will the supportive housing allow children?
No, so this will be only for singles and vets.
Okay, that's great. Great job, y'all.
Thank you. I think there was a question in the chat, Alan.
Okay, let's see.
When will it be operational? So the rehab, we are hoping it's only going to take 6 months. So we are hoping to have it fully moved in by November, December of next year. We will be using a coordinated entry system to fill the units. So utilizing individuals off the by name list that's come through various shelter resources and everything to fill the units, or our unsheltered guests that we have on the streets.
Anybody else? Thank you, Sharika. That's great news. Thank you.
No problem.
So, Laura, I guess you're up next with the data quality.
Hi, everybody. My name is Laura Lama. I work for the city of Winston-Salem, and I am the HMIS admin. I'm down as data quality, but I'm not reporting on data quality. I'm just providing a data update just on the number of people who have been served so far this HUD year, and a little bit of a zoom into a subset of the population and some interesting insights that us here at the city have made. Before I start, can you all hear me okay? I'm trying not to be too loud in my office.
Yeah, okay. We can hear you. Good, Laura.
Great, and I'm going to share my screen. I do have quite a bit of slides, but I'm not trying to take too much of y'all's time. Give me 1 minute just to get situated. All right, thank you. So I'm going to start with just a brief summary on where we are with system performance in terms of how many people have been served this HUD year that we just closed out. Those of you who have been around for a while know that the HUD year that I refer to goes from October 1st to September 30th, and we just wrapped up a HUD year, and we are getting ready to start to do big reviews of that data, make sure that things have been entered correctly, and prep it for submissions, various submissions that happen in the fall and winter. Just a summary, the data that I'm about to show you includes data that was collected by street outreach programs, emergency shelters, transitional housing programs, rapid rehousing programs, and permanent supportive housing programs that are operating in various agencies across the county. So we'll talk about just a summary of system shifts. So I've got a few years worth of data here, and all of them except for the most recent, the column on the most right-hand side. It's all official data from previous submissions that go to HUD. And then the most recent batch of data is as of September 20th, which was the last time I was able to run this report. So the most recent batch of data will continue to be finalized, and I will update y'all once that is officially submitted. But basically what you can see here is that the COC is still not rebounding to serve the full number of people that were served before the pandemic. And that's probably, there's lots of reasons for that. I don't have all of the information in terms of why that is, but I can say that this pattern is true for each subset of project types that I just listed earlier. So from shelters to rapid to permanent supportive housing, all programs in general are still serving fewer people than before the pandemic. The average length of time isn't as high as it was at the peak of the lockdowns, but that metric is not moving downwards to pre-pandemic levels the way that we would like to see it. So average length of time, that's reflecting the amount of time that people are experiencing homelessness in our system on average. As you can see, lately, the portion of people who are exiting to permanent housing situations is the lowest that we've seen in recent years. Right now, for the most recent HUD year that we just closed out, it's at 19%, which is quite low, and the lowest that we've seen in some time. And again, I can't speak too much as to why that is. I don't have all of the information. That is definitely something that can be discussed at length, and I encourage, you know, folks from across the county, the COC, to be brought in to sort of provide more insight into what the data is reflecting. Now I'm going to touch on the age groups and household compositions, just a little bit about who is being served. And the first chart that I'm going to show you is just what types of households are people in when they come to get served by the COC. And as you can see, the overwhelming majority of the people served by the COC are adults who are not accompanied by anyone in their household. That means that they are single adults. They don't have anybody, there's not a spouse or children or anybody else with them. So that does provide a little bit of insight into the situation that folks are in when they come to get services, and what types of resources, what type of housing support they may need, because of the needs of a single person is going to be different from the needs of a family with children. Currently, in the past few years, households with children make up about 6 to 7% of the population overall. Now we're going to look at the age groups of the people who are being served by the community. And when we look at this, we see that most of the people who are being served are adults between the ages of 25 and 54. And I want to zoom in specifically on a subpopulation that has special risks factors and has special service needs. And it's a subpopulation that is slowly growing. As you can see, it might be hard to notice, but older adults from age 55 and older is a population that has been consistently growing over time. So since we have this aging population, we should take a closer look and consider how they are being served. And that's what I'm going to do here moving forward. I do want y'all to keep this in mind, that the HUD always splits up data into basically two categories. There's households with only adults in it and households with adults and children. And people who are over the age of 55 make up only 3% of the households, of people in households with children, right? So that means that when we're looking at data for seniors who are homeless, we are overwhelmingly looking at data of single adults, right? So we're not talking about very many like grandparents who are living with their children and their grandchildren. It's overwhelmingly people who are by themselves. They're single adults. Okay. So as you can see, that over the last couple of years, this population has been steadily growing in terms of what portion of the overall population are folks who are over the age of 55. The most common thing that we would assume about this population is that they may have special needs, like certain types of disabilities. Over half of the seniors report having at least one type of disability. And this may be an undercount considering how difficult it may be for somebody who is homeless to access healthcare. So there might be some underreporting happening here. I can only assume. And these are the most common types of disabilities amongst this population. Number one being the physical disabilities of various types, mental health disorders of various types, chronic health condition. That could be something like diabetes, lupus, cancer, things like that. And then substance use disorder. So since these are the most common disabilities among this subpopulation that is growing, that definitely means that in order to properly provide services for this population, the COC needs to be prepared, with the resources to provide for these types of disabilities, right? Whether it's an agency that is a direct service provider that can provide healthcare, or there's a partnership between the homeless the homeless service agencies and some sort of healthcare agency like the hospitals or a clinic or something like that. So how much longer does homelessness last for seniors? And what we can see here is that seniors have consistently had longer episodes of homelessness compared to the general population. The average length of time that seniors spent homeless peaked during the pandemic. And sorry, I don't want to skip some important information here. So sorry, the average length of time homeless for, sorry, something is going on in my computer. Give me 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. I had something disappeared on my screen and now I can see it again. So the average length of time that of homelessness for seniors peaked during the pandemic. And when the COC procedures changed due to the public health emergency, agencies were actually prioritizing keeping sensitive populations in non-congregate shelters in order to protect them from the virus from spreading. And various policies and limitations for various agencies and programs were changed for some time, such as rapid rehousing had changes to their enrollment criteria, which allowed for people to be enrolled quicker. And there were waivers to various policies. And I don't have all the details about what types of waivers, but basically what I'm trying to communicate is that there were significant changes, not just to the resources that were available to the community, but to the sort of rules and limitations of various programs that were serving the community. As I'll explain later, it seems that the longer and uninterrupted shelter stays may have been beneficial for the senior population. And as you can see here, in 2021, there were much longer stays for the senior population in homelessness. So when homeless seniors leave the COC, where do they go? Before the pandemic, seniors were exiting to shelters to go to other shelters. They were exiting to live outside unsheltered, and many were exiting to unknown settings, meaning that they were leaving shelters and transitional housing programs without necessarily knowing or reporting where they were going to go. The rate for exits to permanent housing was too low, but then there was a sudden shift in 2021, as you can see here, In 2021, that marks the highest housing success rate for seniors. And we saw a decrease in the portion of people that were exiting to temporary situations and a decrease in the portion of people who were exiting to unknown situations. And in this year, this is the year that we had all of those non-congregate shelters operating. A lot of waivers were in place by HUD and other funders, allowing for some limitations from various programs like rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing to sort of be on pause. And there were extra staff. There was case management happening at those non-congregate shelters, and I think a lot of just extra support was happening during this emergency time. And you can see that the big difference from the pre-pandemic years to that 2021 year where all of those extra supports were in place. This is another way to look at where seniors go when they exit shelters. You can see that in 2021, which is what we're looking at here, this is data from 2021, you can see that there were a low number, you can see that there were still a large portion of seniors leaving shelters to go to unsheltered settings, and the portion going to rentals with or without subsidies is the largest it's been in many years. And this is likely due to the higher quality service that was being provided in the non-congregate shelters and the increased flexibility that came with various, waivers that were putting a pause on limitations to various programs. Now, when you compare this to data, the same data, but for 2023, you can see that there was a lot of change, specifically in the green portion, which is the permanent housing settings, which is where you'd want to see most people going. You see that there was a lot of shrinking happening here. So the portion of seniors exiting to any type of permanent housing has shrunk, and the portion of seniors who were exiting to homeless settings, which is the orange, or some of the orange settings, like shelter and street outreach, that grew significantly. And this is my guess, is that this is likely impacted by the closing of the non-congregate shelters, the decreasing of resources for staffing, less staffing meeting people where they are, right? The way that they were in the non-congregate shelters, and a even tighter housing market than there even was back in 2021, right? Things have not gotten easier. So I think that helps us understand the big difference that we're seeing, not just in this subpopulation, but the difference that we're seeing for the entire homeless population. I think zooming in to one population with very high needs can kind of help us see what's going on for everybody. So I know that was a lot of information and I probably went over it too quickly, but I do want to open this up for comments or questions, clarifying questions that y'all may have. Does anybody have questions?
Thank you, Laura. That was some very good
Laura,
information.
this is Sophia.
Okay.
I do have
Good.
one question for you. Does your data show the gender? And I may have missed it, so I do apologize.
Yeah, I can get that data. I just didn't include it here. I don't have it off the top of my head, but
Okay.
I might be able to pull it up while y'all discuss.
Yeah. And the reason why I asked is I'm just curious if that information would be helpful for those that are doing the work to know how to refer people to different spaces, especially if someone has a program specifically for elder women or for elder men. I think that could be helpful. Or non-binary persons, etc.
Yeah, I'm currently pulling up where I was doing the analysis. Any other questions? Was there anything that I showed that wasn't clear? I'm happy to explain anything or repeat anything because I know that it was a lot of information. So I don't have data compiled for the gender breakdowns for this population, not at my fingertips, but I can get that. But I think that it, just like with the rest of the overall homeless population in our community, it is overwhelmingly men, with women being in the minority, but I don't have the exact breakdown right now.
Laura, there is a question for you.
Okay, let me take a look. So the question is, if the results from the pandemic vouchers and resources were beneficial, any plans to start again? I think that's a great question. I do feel pretty confident in saying that the changes that were made to the resources available and some of those rule changes were beneficial. And I think that other folks in the COC may be able to provide more detail about that because that's not my area of focus. But though all of those resource changes and waivers and things like that, all of that came from HUD and maybe some of the state ESG office, which I think is also ultimately funded by HUD or the federal government. So if the community wanted to replicate some of those variables so that we could continue to have similar benefits, it will have to be a local investment, which is something that other communities do. There are communities in and outside of North Carolina that do have very creative and innovative local investments that allow for various types of boosts, to the housing abilities of the COCs to be a reality. So I think that is possible, but it wouldn't be coming from the federal government, right? Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. But I guess a follow-up, if you could point to any one of those policies or resources that was most beneficial, what do you have a perspective on what that would be?
Well, the major one that I saw, and I think other people would agree, is I think having non-congregate shelter options was a big benefit for various populations, not just the senior population. I think there's always been a certain portion of the population that the shelter or the traditional emergency shelter format is not the right place. It's not conducive to maybe their physical disabilities, their mental disabilities, or just other important preferences that they hold. I also think that there was just simply a lot of funding made available for staffing, and with more people, you have more flexibility to meet people where they are. Where right now, my understanding, again, this is not my area of expertise, that without that extra staffing, the service is just not able to be met, right? Or it's not, that quality of service is not the same. So the meeting people where they are may not be able to happen as easily. And I'm sure that people who do direct services may be able to provide a lot more insight than me. I'm just the data person. And then there's various other things that I'm sure were true. There were a lot of administrative type of policy changes that I can't speak on, but I know that because of the emergency, things were just able to limitations were sort of paused. And that definitely is a sort of question that maybe y'all would want to ask others in the COC to sort of elaborate on and talk about how those policy changes and administrative changes may have improved flexibility and therefore improved service for the clients.
Any more questions for Laura? Okay, well, thank you, Laura. That's a great job, great information. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so on the agenda next is Bo, and is Jan here?
She is not. She's not able to join us.
Okay, Bo. So you're going to cover the pressure on shelters due to gentrification.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. I promised Sarika that I'd keep my report to 45 minutes. She gave me that as a time limit, so don't worry. No, actually, I'll be brief. I wanted to give a little context to what I wanted to discuss today, in that I am seeing some disturbing signs of potential impact of gentrification to the Industrial Hill area. Specifically, this is the area where Samaritan, Bethesda Center, and Crisis Control are located. If you can imagine an area that is marked by boundaries of MLK to the south and Northwest Boulevard to the north, Highway 52 to the east, and then Cherry Street to the west. And to bring a little context to my being sensitive to some of the things I'm seeing, is that I've experienced gentrification before. A quick example is that in my last organization, my first 2 weeks on the job, I walked out of the front door of the building to see 12 police officers in full riot gear carrying assault rifles literally running down the middle of the street single file. Fast forward 10 years, and there are now $500,000 condos in that neighborhood. So gentrification can happen rather quickly. And I just think that it is something that, not anything that we need to be overly concerned about or paranoid about, but we need to be aware that there are some trending signs that would challenge the commission to be thinking down the road, 5 years, 10 years, how are we going to manage the changes that are happening? Within that border, that boundary that I just described to you, there are currently 38 males and 13 females that are living outdoor in 2 separate encampments. So this is beyond the people that are staying overnight with Samaritan and with Bethesda Center. we have been experiencing a significant increase in complaints from the business owners in the Industrial Hill area. It's risen to the point that there for a couple of weeks, there was a very active email chain going around, everybody listing their complaints and voicing their displeasure. The complaints ranged from vandalism, intimidation, property damage, to people sleeping literally on the sidewalks in front of the businesses, and people defecating on the sidewalks were some of the highest complaints. DWSP, led by Jason, held a community meeting in which a lot of these business owners showed up to discuss their concerns. Jan and I attended that meeting, and we were later in the meeting, we were given an opportunity to address things from our perspective. And the short version of that is that we stressed to the community that we were here to help and that we're part of the solution, not part of the problem. And overall, I would say I thought the meeting went very well. Jason did a terrific job of moderating that particular meeting. Some of the changes that we're seeing, I'm sure you're very familiar with the area, the old carpet warehouse has been purchased. They're on the corner of Liberty and North Patterson. That's going to become apartments. Before this meeting, I tried to find out how many apartments were going in there, but I was unsuccessful. But I know it's going to be a fairly large development. And then coming further north on Patterson from there, across the street on the other side of Liberty, is another blank warehouse, vacant warehouse, and that has recently been sold. I have not been able to discover what their plans are for that building, but as I sit here in my office talking to you today, I'm looking across the street at that building, and as you can imagine, I'm very curious at what's going to go there. And then across 10th Street from that building is the new Two Cities Church. I will share very happily that we have a very positive relationship with the people leadership team at Two Cities Church, and they see themselves coming into this neighborhood to walk beside us in serving the homeless population. And they have stressed time and time again how much they want to be supportive of our efforts. So with them and with Jason at DWSP, I think we have two very strong voices to assist us in the homeless community and serving them. And for those of you that are familiar with our facility, there is a large vacant parking lot on the south side of our building. I made the mistake of assuming that that was our parking lot because when I started last year, we were using it. We had been using it for years. Well, I received an email about a month ago notifying me that that indeed was not our parking lot and that it's going to be fenced in at the end of the year. And so we're going to lose access to that. And then further north on Patterson, within sight of this building, there's going to be a school open. And so there's a lot of variables going on in this area, Industrial Hill area, that could have a negative impact on our ability to serve the homeless. We're certainly going to, at the very least, need to be aware of and develop and manage a very positive public relations campaign as we are interacting with the existing property owners and these new businesses and new entities that are coming to this area. I think we need to be prepared with our messaging and work very diligently on establishing as strong a relationships as we can with these entities. So with that, that's it. I shared these concerns with Andrea at United Way at another meeting, And she had asked me to share this with the commission. Happy to answer any questions, but I appreciate your time today and thank you for your attention.
Bo, there is a question from Jennifer in the chat. Do you see that?
Let me see. I'm like Sharika now. I'm not the most with. No,
it says who owns the parking lot.
That's JKS Incorporated, which is the same people that own the Winston-Salem Cup Museum, Robert Hall, and then a large portion of those buildings there on Liberty. Will Spencer and his wife's name, I think, is Christy.
Okay. Sharika talked earlier about rehabbing a hotel. Has there been any discussion about rehabbing some of those office warehouses?
That's a great question, and not that I am aware of. I'm really going to go out on a limb here and just share some thoughts that I have. I would love for us as a community to rehab one of these warehouses in the area and develop a one-stop shop, if you could, where not only homelessness support is there, but mental health, addiction counseling, that we have services that target that 16 to 25 age group that I feel like there's a huge gap in our community. We're missing that group. You know, if we could just have a large facility that had a lot of different services under one roof, think of the impact that that could have for our community. But that's just my vision.
I have a question. Does the Bethesda Center have any kind of mortgage or outstanding debt over the property that we currently occupy with our shelter and the annex that was built?
Not directly. The only thing that we have from an obligatory standpoint regarding the facilities and the property was the city of Winston-Salem gave us some money for the construction or the purchase or something. I don't know exactly. But anyway, they gave us money in two different funding streams. And we have an obligation to have money in reserves for a number of years to kind of offset that. And those expire after a period of time. But that's the only obligation that is there.
Because I share your concerns in watching how the appearance has changed, and they've also closed roaming of furniture, so that although we were there first and people have been firmly entrenched there for decades, the people around it are trying to change the character of it and perhaps displace those people from one of the few safe spaces that they have. And so I agree we should act in an anticipatory fashion in getting our message out and making sure the facility on the exterior is as cleaned up as possible. I don't know if that's something the board at the Bethesda Center may want to look into a little bit with, I would say, a little policing of the area, because I don't know why they would put such an expensive condominium complex or apartment complex there if they didn't anticipate displacing the homeless people.
Right. Well, and I appreciate your comments, Jennifer. Thank you. I have tried to do some things on the exterior to improve the look as much as the budget will allow. But as Sharika can confirm, we're pretty tight on the operating side of our budget. And we've had some internal issues that have had to be addressed. Made some major changes on the inside, both from a safety standpoint and a quality of living standpoint for the guests that are here, have been a higher priority than sprucing up the outside, if you will. But we have done a few things, and I continue to work on that bit by bit as I can. But once again, stretching the pennies only goes so far. We're taking donations, by the way. But thank you for your comments.
And thank you for what you're doing, and that we need to be talking about this issue. If you drive down there, what they're putting down there is incongruous with the Industrial Hill area. So I don't know what the anticipation is for the living circumstances of the people who've been there, or that the shelter that's there.
Right. Well, as you know, I just refer to it as gentrification. I see it in the early stages, you know, that this community is going to shift, and we can either figure out a way to be a part of it, or we're going to have to figure out a plan B. You know, so you know, the commission's attention to this is greatly appreciated, because it's a bigger problem. In my mind, it's a bigger problem than just the Bethesda Center, because I think it's going to impact Crisis, and I think it's going to impact Samaritan. Maybe not as soon, but it will. But I'm working diligently to try to strengthen the relationships with the business owners that are currently complaining, and I've been able to specifically address some of their major concerns. And since I made those changes, the complaints have certainly quieted down. So I think it's manageable, but it needs a focused effort by those of us in the community serving the homeless.
Is their plan just to fence in the parking lot, or are they going to develop it in some way?
My understanding is initially they're just fencing it in so that it can be utilized for parking, with access going out the other side to some of their other venues. They did not share any, quote, development other than just parking. If there's no other questions, again, Alan, everyone on the commission, thank you for your time and your attention today.
Thank you, Bo. And Bo, I did have one question. The apartment complex that they're getting ready to build, I know you couldn't find out how many units, but do you know if it's going to be like a high-priced type situation, or is it is?
I don't know the exact street, but those new apartments that just went up, or I guess they're still under construction, parallel with MLK and down close to Cherry. I don't even know what the name of them are, but there's a huge development that was just built or is being built there. It's the same company. So the anticipation is they're going to be very similar.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Anybody? You're very welcome. Anybody else have any questions? Does anyone have any announcements or other business or anything you want to bring up? And I don't know if everyone has heard, but Kathleen is ending her contract, so she is only going to be working with us until the end of this month. So October 31st is her last day. So just so everyone knows, we're going to really miss her. So, okay. So our next meeting then, I guess, is scheduled for, well, it's the third Thursday of the month. So it'll be the third Thursday in November. And that meeting will be virtual. And so our first in-person meeting is going to be March. And Bo, I'll get with you on trying to set that up later. So,
absolutely, just let me know.
Okay. So thanks to everyone. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you in November.
Thank you, everyone.